Thank you. All right. So yes, the dopaminergic system. The reason why I think it's important to consider dopamine in exercise is related to the relationship between dopamine, cognition, and aging. Over the years, the past 2 decades, we have seen several studies showing that when we age, there is a reduction in the dopamine system. This is studied by Volkov et al. From 1998, showing a clear reduction of dopamine receptor availability when we age, and this was linked to performance on both motor tasks and cognitive tasks. This has been followed up more recently by a group in Umeå, using a large sample of 180 participants, and here the results was extended, showing that not only is dopamine receptor availability related to memory functions in the striatum, it's also linked to hippocampus receptor availability and episodic memory. Further on, there has been other studies showing that dopamine synthesis also is related to executive functions. So there appears to be some kind of relationship between aging, dopamine receptor availability or dopamine synthesis, and cognitive performance. So perhaps understanding individual variability in dopamine could actually increase our understanding good cognitive aging. So if we go on to exercise, there has been some animal studies linking dopamine and exercise. Here you see a study from 1997, and this was done in rats where prolonged running elevates dopamine concentration. So in this time course, it was shown that 20 minutes of running actually increases dopamine turnover, and this lasted for about 2 hours post-running. Further on, in animal studies, there has been studies have shown that if you put mice in environments where they can engage in physical exercise, there is a reduction in dopamine transporter, indicating that there is a change in dopamine synaptic plasticity. And in this study, this was also linked to performance on a task. So from the animal literature, it is clear that dopamine appears to have a relationship with exercise, and perhaps this could also be extended to humans. In humans, however, there has been less studies performed, and one of the earliest studies was by this group, and here they examined whether acute exercise could influence dopamine receptor availability. And so this study, they had a group of individuals and they examined their dopamine receptor availability before and after 30 minutes of exercise. So one time they went into the scanner without having any exercise, and the other time they performed vigorous exercise for 30 minutes. However, this study showed that there was no change, there was no acute effect from exercise on dopamine receptor availability, which was quite a big surprise, considering that the animal literature have shown that there are actually acute effects of exercise. Another human study linking genetics, especially the COMT gene, which is related to dopamine, and this cross-sectional study showed that if you're a VAL carrier, which is linked to a reduced dopamine function in the prefrontal cortex, then you actually gain beneficial effects of being highly fit. So those that are VAL carriers and exercise, they actually perform better on cognitive tests or equally good as those that are MET carriers. And MET carriers, they already perform at their maximum level, because they have a high prefrontal cortex dopamine functioning. Further on, in human studies, this study by Dang and colleagues showed that high actively individuals could actually reduce the age effect of dopamine. In this study, participants from the ages 23 to 80, they used pedometers for 10 days to understand how active they were. And then in the analysis, they divided this group into people that were less active and those that were highly active. And what was shown was that the people that were less active, they had a age-related reduction in dopamine availability, whereas those that were not active, they did not have any effect on age. They were more active, they did not have any effect on age and dopamine, giving us an idea that dopamine and physical fitness could actually be related to cognitive aging. However, this was a cross-sectional study, so it's difficult to understand whether we can increase the physical activity and actually see a change in dopamine levels. So these studies, they inspired us to perform one of the first exercise studies that actually examines dopamine availability before and after 6 months of training. So we created a study, FIBRA, which stands for Physical Influence on Brain in Aging. And in FIBRA, which is a classical randomized controlled trial, we had 60 older adults. They were between ages 64 and 78. They either performed aerobic exercise for 6 months or stretching, toning, and resistance training for 6 months. We did a lot of MRI-based measurements. I'm not going to talk about that today. But we also included dopamine PET of the D2 system using Reclopride before and after the study. We also included a large cognitive test battery of about 27 different tests covering most of the cognitive functions. The 6 months of training was performed individualized training using a personal trainer, and we had good attendance. 88% of all exercise sessions were actually performed as planned. So the Reclopride PET, and in combination with structural MRI, made us subdivide the striatum into a motor part, an associate part, and a limbic part, because we think that different parts of the striatum is related to different functions. The first set of results that I would like to talk about is the cross-sectional data based on the baseline data. So what we did was that we correlated aerobic fitness level, which was measured using standardized oxygen uptake, so VO2 peak. And throughout the striatum, both when you look at the entire striatum or if you subdivide it into different parts, you see a relationship between higher fitness and more available dopamine receptor. Let's see. And then when we go on to the intervention was actually a success. We see a clear group by time interaction in increased physical fitness. However, as you can see in this figure, the control group, which is the bars to the right, also increased significantly of their physical fitness. So the exercise group, they increased more, but there was a significant increase also in the control group. That's didn't really matter when we looked at cognitive functions. For cognitive functions, we saw a group by time interaction favoring the aerobic exercises. But when we examined dopamine receptor availability, there was no difference between the two groups. So that initial result was a bit disappointing, showing that, okay, exercise may not influence dopamine function in aging. However, since the control group also increased their physical fitness significantly, we thought that maybe we should collapse the two groups and examine individual differences in physical fitness. And when we looked at individual differences in fitness, we can see that there was a significant relationship between increased physical fitness and a reduction of available dopamine receptors. And that may sound a bit counterintuitive that there would be a reduction in dopamine receptor availability following exercise. But then we need to remember that we are using Reclopride, and Reclopride competes with endogenous dopamine. So what we interpret this is that we see that there is an increase of endogenous dopamine in relation to increases of physical fitness. And then the next set of analysis was to link this to cognitive performance. And here we could actually see that the reduction of dopamine receptor availability would actually predict working memory updating performance. So in this study, we believe that we have shown, we have closed the loop, showing that if you increase your aerobic fitness, you can increase endogenous dopamine, and this is linked to increased executive performance. So to summarize, we have shown that higher aerobic fitness is indeed associated with higher dopamine receptor availability throughout the striatum using our cross-sectional data, and this has also been shown in some of the animal studies. When you increase your aerobic fitness, we see a reduction in D2R availability, and we believe that this is due to elevated levels of synaptic dopamine. So that we believe that you can actually influence the dopaminergic system by increasing your physical fitness. Importantly, the change in physical fitness may actually improve cognitive performance via the dopaminergic system in healthy older individuals, and I believe that this is the first time this has been shown using a randomized control exercise study. So with that, of course, I haven't done this all alone. There are a lot of people in the lab that I would like to thank, and also the sponsors. So thank you.